From the station that made country music famous, 650 AM WSM, this is a Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Hey, it's Charlie Matos, and in this episode, we sit down and Zoom with Tamara Saviano. Tamara was the author of the book Without Getting Killed or Caught, The Life of Guy Clark, and that book has now been made into an amazing documentary film, and it premieres Friday, August the 6th at Nashville's Bell Court Theater. Enjoy our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast with Tamara Saviano.
Achievement Award to Guy Clark for his outstanding accomplishments as a songwriter, recording artist, and musical mentor in the field of country music.
Texans really love their heroes, and Guy is a true blue Texas hero.
He was a powerful figure with an enormous presence.
I'm pretty sure they'll say he's one of the greatest American songwriters that ever lived.
Why didn't Guy Clark become a big star? I'm not sure they yet knew how to market a poet of Guy's caliber.
Guy didn't care about pleasing the record label. He was passionate about the songs, and he was hell-bent on doing things his way. It bombed.
And I was lost, looking for something.
I'm Susanna Clark. I live in Nashville with my husband Guy and our best friend, Townes Van Zandt.
It was a mythical love story. You had to be there to get it.
Guy and I were married, but Townes and I were soulmates.
He knew what was most important to Susanna.
Townes Van Zandt died on January 1st, 1997.
Susanna surrendered something that night. She went to bed and didn't get up.
I quit and started over. And all you gotta do is just do it. Nobody says you can't.
I continued to spiral down as Guy's star kept rising.
Here I am, a folk singer.
He knew what he wanted to be. That's clarity.
Like desperados waiting for a train.
You know, I'm just cursed with artistic integrity. Lord, what a beautiful woman.
His songs were literature.
It couldn't go on. This might be it.
I never was a country singer. I'm still not a country singer. I just write songs and play them. I'm Guy Clark.
Tamara Saviano joins us now. Without Getting Killed or Caught. Originally the book, and now the movie and the Nashville premiere. You were on with us a few weeks back, but we wanted to have you back because this is significant in Nashville movie history and for the Guy Clark lovers in our audience and in this community. It's great to see you this morning. I wish it were in studio, but via Zoom.
Hey,
welcome, Tamara. Welcome back.
Hey, Bill and Charlie. So great to be here with you. Yeah, I wish I was in the studio with you, too. Next time, for sure.
And what people on radio heard was the trailer, the movie trailer. And, of course, it was obvious for those of you watching us on Circle Television. One of the first things that struck me was seeing Lyle Lovett in that trailer. And he was introducing Guy. And before he can finish introducing him, Guy comes up on stage at this award show and starts kissing him. I remember reading the liner notes of Lyle Lovett's first album that Guy wrote. And for some reason, we talk about this artistic integrity that Guy Clark had. One of the lines he said about Lyle Lovett was, "This boy has got light in his fingers."
Yeah, that sounds like Guy, and he's certainly right.
Yeah, because Lyle Lovett's guitar playing was overshadowed by his songwriting and his vocals, but an extraordinary guitar player, and I just love that. Where does the Tamara Saviano story and Guy Clark friendship begin?
Oh, I was in the late 90s. I was the managing editor at Country Music Magazine, and I met Guy in the course of work then, and you know, me, I love crotchety old men, so we really hit it off and just started hanging out and having lunch. And then I started working with him some years later. And, yeah, just kind of one thing led to another. You know, more than anything, I mean, I am his biographer and we did this film, but more than anything, Guy and I were really close friends.
So the premiere in Nashville is Friday night, tomorrow night, and then there's another showing on Saturday, correct?
Yeah, it's actually at the Bell Court for a week, at least a week. So Friday and Saturday are sold out, but people can get tickets all the way through next Thursday and maybe even longer. Theater, of course, because of COVID, is at half capacity right now. So it's not 100% full. So yeah, there are definitely tickets available for after Saturday.
Okay. Friday, Saturday shows are at 7:00, by the way. What about this, what appears to be a love triangle, as we could hear and see in the trailer there with Townes Van Zandt and Guy's wife, Susanna? When I say a love triangle, you think of that there's one party that's not in on it, but they were all in on it.
Yeah.
Where did that, how did that develop, and why was it, and how was it so acceptable?
Well, I think, for me, the bottom line is that Townes took a lot of pressure off of Guy. So Guy didn't have to be the charming husband all the time. Guy, wanted to focus on his work and his songwriting and his touring. And Guy was a really stoic, West Texas guy. And Susanna and Townes, in my opinion, were much more vulnerable. And so they leaned on each other. And I think, Townes was someone for Susanna that Guy just could not be. And it worked for the three of them. As Susanna says in the film, Guy and Townes were best friends. Susanna and Guy were married, and Susanna and Townes were soulmates. And that's just kind of what it was.
How did Sissy Spacek become involved as your narrator?
Oh, well, I think that was divine intervention from Susanna Clark. Paul and I were having breakfast one morning, and all of a sudden I just yelled out loud, "Sissy Spacek is Susanna." And Paul was like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I don't know, but Sissy Spacek has to be our Susanna. I just know it." And I didn't know much about Sissy. I mean, I was a fan, of course, but I didn't know that much about her. And I got her autobiography that day. I started reading it. And in that book, I learned that Sissy grew up in Quitman, Texas, 100 miles away from where Susanna grew up in Atlanta, Texas. And then I read further in the book and learned that after Sissy won her Oscar for Coal Miner's Daughter, she came to Nashville to record an album. Rodney Crowell produced that album, which I didn't know. So then I called Rodney, and Rodney said, "Not only did I produce that album, there's a Susanna Clark song on that album." So, it was just meant to be. And Sissy came into the studio and just transformed into Susanna before our very eyes. It was wonderful. We could see immediately why she is an Academy Award-winning actor.
So let me tell you my Sissy Spacek story quickly. I honeymooned at the Grand Ole Opry, and that night, Loretta Lynn brought Sissy Spacek to the Grand Ole Opry because Coal Miner's Daughter was coming out. So my first ever Grand Ole Opry show, Sissy Spacek was there. The 6 degrees of Sissy Spacek this morning without getting killed or caught. The biography and now the movie that's at the Belcourt Theater, Tamara Saviano. So this collection, this library from which you had to draw, where did you get this archive?
Oh, it's all Guy's.
Really?
Guy was a pack rat. And he invited me into his home when we were working on the biography and then the film. And he just let me poke around every corner of his house. I was rifling through drawers. I was looking under the bed. I was, finding stuff everywhere. With Guy's direction, he was like, "Oh, go look over there. There might be that, there might be something there." And he kept everything, which for a researcher and a biographer was wonderful. So really, largely the content in the movie comes from Guy's house. I did license a lot of footage from Austin City Limits and some great photographers. Jim McGuire, of course. Al Clayton was another photographer that did all the famous porch pictures, and Marshall Falwell. Those 3 photographers provided a lot of the photos that you see in the film. So we licensed those. Yeah, I mean, it was a big job though. Trying to find everything was and piece it together.
Well, what you're telling me is he had everything. It was just not organized.
No. Yeah, going through everything. I mean, we have so many thousands of photos, that Paul digitized, and then Susanna's diaries and Susanna's cassette tapes. provided the structure to the film. And those are just pure gold, Susanna's own words. And the film is told really, Susanna and Guy tell the story mostly in the film. And then we have, Lyle, of course, at the beginning. And then we have, Rodney and Vince and Verlin Thompson and Terry and Jaharvey Allen, Steve Earle, fill in the gaps. So the story is told by Guy and Susanna and the people that were actually there.
Where do they meet, Susanna and Guy?
They met in Oklahoma City in the late 1960s. Guy was dating Bunny Talley, who was Susanna's sister. And that's how they first met. And then Bunny committed suicide. And that brought Guy and Susanna together. Really tragic story. And yeah, that was the beginning of their long love affair.
What happens when Townes Van Zandt dies? And Rodney Crowell referenced it in the trailer that we saw, where she took to her bed until her death. How long a period was that, Tamara? And what is the backstory on it?
She was in bed for 15 years. And Susanna, Susanna suffered from grief. She was really deeply grieving. And I think it started when her sister killed herself and she never really got over it. And then Susanna and Townes were just so tight. And when Townes died, Rodney says it's in the movie that Susanna just decided it was over. It was just over. And, she had some back issues. So she had pain and she was self-medicating with pain pills. And she was depressed and she became agoraphobic and just didn't leave the house and didn't, barely left her bed. It was really sad, especially because she was such a talented artist and, she was the hit songwriter in the family. She's the only one that ever made any money writing songs. And it's a really sad downfall.
Got to dance like nobody's watching, of all things. She wrote that. And
yeah.
Quickly in closing, how is it that in your lifetime you have worked on the music of Stephen Foster and Guy Clark? And there's a reference that Verlin Thompson makes to Guy being one of the greatest songwriters in the history of the craft. And yet you've got Guy Clark, you've got Stephen Foster. Girl.
Yeah. Well, I think, as you know, you and I are good friends and we've known each other a while. I love songwriters. They are, to me, just these brilliant artists and poets. And I've always loved, songwriters. So I've been, attracted to delving into their lives. And I've been really fortunate to be able to do this for all these years. So I'm happy about that.
Filmmaker, biographer, and friend, Tamara Saviano. Thank you for joining us this morning without getting killed or caught. Friday night, tomorrow night. It's premiering here in Nashville at the Belcourt Theater.
To some land I ain't bought if I can just get off of this LA freeway without getting killed or caught.
Thanks for listening to our Coffee, Country, and Cody podcast. Our program director at WSM Radio is J. Patrick Tittle. Our digital producer is Haley Hall. Marketing and promotions director is Amanda Cannon. And I'm Charlie Matos. If you like what you've heard, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And leave us a review on iTunes. It really does help new people find the show.